Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing our reading of St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica. It's one of the greatest works in the field of theology itself. We learn about Aquinas in philosophy. He is someone who is really written about quite extensively. A lot of people recently tried to critique him, but they have not written anything on his level. And so it's easy to criticize Michael Jordan when you're a pot-belly loser who can't slam dunk, right? So make sure you read people's works before you trust someone's opinion on something where they haven't read the texts. They've just watched a 3-minute YouTube video and now they feel like they're an expert, right? Still, always read someone's work before passing judgment on their place in history. Alright? We're in volume 1. We're in question 5. It has 6 articles. The question is of goodness in general. The first article is whether goodness differs really from being. Okay? So he has a little mini intro on this question, and then he'll get into the articles. Go ahead and listen to this as you're relaxing, you're on your commute, washing dishes, marinating chicken, whatever fun thing it is that you're doing. We next consider goodness. First, goodness in general. Secondly, the goodness of God. Under the first head, there are 6 points of inquiry. 1. Whether goodness and being are the same, really. 2. Granted that they differ only in idea, which is prior in thought. 3. Granted that a being is prior, whether every being is good. 4. To what cause should goodness be reduced? 5. Whether goodness consists in mode, species, and order. Whether goodness is divided into the virtuous, the useful, and the pleasant. Okay, first article, whether goodness differs really from being. We proceed thus to the first article. Objection 1. It seems that goodness differs really from being, for Boethius says, De Hebdom, I perceive that in nature, the fact that things are good is one thing, that they are is another. Therefore, goodness and being really differ. Objection 2. Further, nothing can be its own form, but that it is called good which has the form of being, according to the commentary on De Cassius. Therefore, goodness differs really from being. Objection 3. Further, goodness can be more or less, but being cannot be more or less. Therefore, goodness differs really from being. On the contrary, Augustine says, de Dr. Chris I 42, that inasmuch as we exist, we are good. I answered that goodness and being are really the same, and differ only in idea, which is clear from the following argument. Now it's interesting here, he says being and goodness are virtually the same. I remember I once tested a philosophy, Dr. Gregory B. Sadler on YouTube. Well, he kind of ignores me now in his chats, but there was a time when I asked him, what is your thought on beingness? And he said it doesn't exist. And then I'm like, okay, he's definitely very wise, but he didn't really respond to how I expected. So it's interesting here to see Aquinas is talking about being and what it is to say, what it is. And differ only in idea, which is clear from the following argument. The essence of goodness consists in this, that it is in some way desirable. So goodness has to be tied to some type of desirability. Hence, the philosopher says, goodness is what all desire. What all desire. I think you could have some fun with that example. If we all desire to not allow people to eat meat. Some might see that as good, whereas I don't think that's good, even if the majority desire it. Now it is clear that a thing is desirable only insofar as it is perfect. Okay, so perfection. For all desire their own perfection, but everything is perfect. Hey, that's a good point. For all desire their own perfection, but everything is perfect so far as it is actual. Therefore it is clear that a thing is perfect so far as it exists. For it is existence that makes all things actual, as is clear from the foregoing. Question 3, Article 4, Question 4, Article 1. Hence it is clear that goodness and being are the same really, but goodness presents the aspects of desirableness which being does not present. I wouldn't have thought of that. Differing in idea, and that the aspect of desirableness plays a part. Reply objection 1. Although goodness and being are the same really, nevertheless, since they differ in thought, they are not predicted of a thing absolutely in the same way, since being properly signifies that something actually is, and actuality properly correlates to potentiality. So, actuality correlating to potentiality. A thing is, in consequence, said simply to have being. Accordingly, as it is primarily distinguished from that which is only in potentiality. And this is precisely each thing's substantial being. So, when something has being, it's distinguished from something that only has potentiality, and that each thing has a substantial being. Hence, by its substantial being, everything is said to have simply, but by any further actuality, it is said to have being relatively. Thus to be white implies relative being, for to be white does not take a thing out of simply potential being, because only a thing that actually has being can receive this mode of being. Okay, so you have to actually have that being, okay? Hence, that which has the ultimate perfection is said to be simply good. So, the ultimate perfection to be simply good. So, to be ultimate perfection is good. Whatever is good has to be perfect. So, in Islam, when we say Allah is the Most High, we would say Allah is perfect. There's no defect in Allah. Allah is perfect. So, for Christians, they would see God as containing the ultimate good and ultimate perfection. We as Muslims would argue that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is perfect. No weakness is found therein, the Most High. But that which has not the ultimate perfection is ought to have, although in so far as it is at all actual, it has some perfection. It is not said to be perfect simply, nor good simply, but only relatively. Okay, so perfect simplicity, simply good, and then a relative sense. In this way, therefore viewed, in its primal, i.e. substantial being, a thing is said to be simply, and to be good relatively. Okay, so a being said to be simply, and then good relatively. i.e. insofar as it has being, but viewed in its complete actuality. So, something is relatively good insofar as it has being, but you also have to look at the complete actuality. A thing is said to be relatively and to be good simply. Hence, the saying of Boethius, I perceive that in nature the fact that things are good is one thing, that they are is another. So, things are good, and then that they are is to be referred to a thing's goodness simply and having being simply. Because regard in its primal actuality, a thing simply exists, and regard in its complete actuality. So we have simply exists, complete actuality. It is good simply. Good simply. These are key phrases we have to remember. Simply exists, complete actuality. Good simply. Good relatively. Complete actuality again, yes. So there's a pattern here. Ultimate perfection. Simply good. So you start to see the pattern here. In such sort that even in its primal actuality, it is in some sort good. And even in its complete actuality, it is in some sort has being. Okay. So we have complete actuality, primal actuality. So at the primal stage, it has some sort of good. When it's in complete actuality, it has some sort of being. Reply objection 2. Goodness is a form so far as absolute goodness signifies complete actuality. Okay, I can see that. Goodness is a form. By form, when I hear something like that, I think of an ideal, an archetype, something along those lines. A standard, an expression, a degree, right? When something is absolutely good, it's completed actuality. So there's no potentiality left because it's perfect. To be perfect is to be absolute, and to absolute just means something has achieved its perfection. So I think that's a very logical statement. It couldn't be absolutely good if it hadn't been completed actually. Reply objection 3. Again, goodness is spoken of as more or less according to a thing's superadded actuality, for example, as to knowledge or virtue. Goodness is spoken of as more or less according to a thing's superadded actuality. So, a thing's superadded actuality. So, virtue and knowledge. We're going to write that up here. Knowledge, virtue. Okay. Now, there's a little bit of a confusing part here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, there's 3 ejections. Reply ejection 3. Okay, yes. I have to put the line here because otherwise you're going into the second article and it'll literally make you think that it is talking about the other one. Alright, perfect. So the terminology we learned in this section, whether goodness differs from being. He argues that goodness and being are really the same. They differ in idea. And that goodness has the aspect of desirableness, which being does not present. So, desirableness is a key factor here, and differing in idea. He argues It is clear that a thing is desirable only insofar as it is perfect. And he pointed out that we all desire our own perfection. No one is perfect is something we say to ourselves a lot, but yet people still strive for it. People who have no regard for perfecting themselves or bettering themselves, I think that would be the error code in our existence, right? Okay. And again, making sure we understand substantial being. Ultimate perfection is said to be simply good. We have perfect simply. We have good simply. And then speaking of the relativity of those, they're beautiful. Something simply existing, primal actuality, complete actuality. And then he mentions knowledge and virtue, added actuality. Excellent. All right. So, I hope you like that reading. It's very dense, very deep, right? But the more you annotate and familiarize yourself with the way in which he speaks and the way in which he formats, you'll learn to love him so. I enjoy reading this. I'm so glad I had some extra time today to get some reading done, cooking's done, chores are done. So I'm able to do what I love, which is reading. By the way, if you'd like to join the blog and support the channel, go to www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Hope to see you there.